Hello, Dave.
Hello, Rabbi.
How are you, Dave?
Shavua Tov.
You well?
And I can't quite make out, is today Tu B'Shvat or was it yesterday?
Today is Tu B'Shvat.
Pardon?
Today.
Today, oh. Because in some places it said Saturday night and Sunday. But I've been getting messages today for Tu B'Shvat.
Today is Tu B'Shvat. I don't know who said otherwise.
I don't know.
Maybe it's from last year.
Yeah, I'm coming now.
Oh. It's lovely. It's really lovely. Wow. Lovely. Lovely one, huh? Oh. Oh, yeah. In my little home office.
Hello, Rambam.
No, well,
Hello, Jeff. Hello, Steve. Hello, Dennis.
Hi, guys.
she's pop. I'm pop.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, absolutely. Nou wat te sê in Afrikaans. In Afrikaans sê die appel val nie ver van die boom af nie. Hè? Ja? Ja.
Okay, so who's giving us competition here? Okay, so they are muted, so we're going to start. Welcome back, everybody. I'm back in Joburg, so it's a bit easier. I'm able to do the YouTube as well. But today we begin a new section, and it is called Shigagot, which means the plural of shogeg. Shogeg is a sin committed by mistake, unintentionally, inadvertently. Let's say you violated Shabbos because you didn't know that what you did was not permitted, or you forgot that it's Shabbos, right? The classical case, you get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go to the toilet on Friday night, and you switch on the light by force of habit, forgetting that it's Shabbos because you're groggy. So that's an inadvertent sin. So there are various offerings brought for different type of transgressions, and this is just the first chapter of quite a few chapters which will deal with all the circumstances. So we have the introduction here. Introduction to Hilchot Shkagot, the laws of inadvertent sins. Included in this text are 5 positive commandments. 1, that a person who transgressed inadvertently should bring a fixed sin offering, meaning it does not depend on his means or circumstances. He has to bring a fixed animal. Different sins require different animals, as we'll learn soon. 2, that a person who does not know whether or not he transgressed inadvertently. How could he not know? For example, he ate something, but he doesn't know for sure if it was kosher or treif. So he can't bring a fixed sin offering because he's not sure he sinned. Maybe it was kosher. So such a person brings a guilt offering until he finds out whether he transgressed, and if he transgressed, then he brings a sin offering. And this guilt offering that he does before he finds out if he really sinned would be called Osham Tolui, a provisional guilt offering. It's hanging, it's sort of tentative, provisional. 3, that a transgressor should offer a guilt offering for certain sins. This is called a definitive guilt offering, Osham Vadai, a definite guilt offering. He knows for a fact that he sinned, and he'll bring a guilt offering rather than a sin offering. We're not going to discuss that today, I don't think, but in the next few days, probably you'll come across it. Number 4, that a transgressor should offer a sacrifice for certain transgressions, so that certain things that are called korban oile v'yored goes up and down, meaning it is adjustable. If you can afford it, give an animal. Animals are expensive. Anybody paid Lobola lately? Huh? Nobody here paid Lobola lately? What's the going rate for a cow?
It's a good few thousand rand.
Is it? So an animal is expensive. What if a guy can't afford an animal? Then he could bring a bird. What if he can't even afford a bird? Then he can bring a meal offering, korban mincha. So there are certain sins where a transgressor would offer a sacrifice, korban oile v'yored, an adjustable guilt offering. If he's rich, he brings an animal. If he's poor, he brings a fowl. If he's poorer still, 1/10 of an ephah as a meal offering. That's the adjustable guilt offering. And the 5th and final one that we'll deal with in these coming chapters, not just today, but in the course of this section, that the Sanhedrin, the great Jewish Supreme Court seated in the temple precinct of Jerusalem, or their chambers, that the Sanhedrin themselves have to offer a sacrifice sometimes if, God forbid, they made a mistake and gave an incorrect ruling on a severe transgression, something as serious as even idolatry, for example, and the community sinned en masse because of the Sanhedrin's erroneous ruling. And afterwards they said, "Oi, what did we do? We made a terrible mistake." So they would have to bring a special bull offering. So those are the 5 different kinds of offerings that will be dealt with in this section. We're going to begin with the korban chatas, with the fixed sin offering, when you know for a fact that you did commit a sin, but it was not on purpose, it was accidentally, by mistake, inadvertently. I gave you the examples before. Number 1, whenever a person inadvertently violates one of the negative commandments, listen closely, a negative commandment, thou shalt not, and he did it. And not just a negative commandment, but a negative commandment that involves a deed. Wasn't just passive, didn't just say something, he actually did something. He committed an action. And the type of serious sin for which one with a reliable chorus Kores is literally means that the soul is cut off. It involves premature death in this world before the age of 50 in the olden days, and the soul forfeits its portion in the world to come. So it's quite serious. So a negative commandment that involves a deed for which the penalty is kores if you did it willingly and knowingly, deliberately. If you did it inadvertently, by mistake, then you're obligated to bring a korban chatas, a sin offering. It is a positive commandment for him to offer a sin offering for his inadvertent transgression, and this is how he makes amends. This is how he will access forgiveness from God for his inadvertent sin. Obviously, he has to regret it as well, but he has to bring a sin offering. 2, all transgressions for which one is liable for kores for their willful violation, one is liable to bring a sin offering for their inadvertent violation, as we just said. But now he's going to give us 3 exceptions. And the exceptions are blasphemy, not giving yourself a bris, and not bringing the Paschal lamb, the Korban Pesach. So blasphemy is if you invoke the sacred name of God unnecessarily, or in swearing at someone or something. Not having a bris and not bringing the Korban Pesach are the only 2 positive commandments. Normally, before we said, when do you bring a sin offering? If you violate a negative commandment, that thou shalt not. But there are 2 exceptions where a positive commandment is violated that will require a sacrifice. And they are bris and Korban Pesach. Negating circumcision and the Paschal sacrifice does not require such an offering, except, so these are the 3 exceptions when you do not bring a sin offering. The first 2, bris and Korban Pesach, are positive commandments, and a sin offering is brought only for the inadvertent violation of a negative commandment. And blasphemy does not involve a deed. Why does blasphemy not involve a deed? Who can tell me? No volunteers? Because blasphemy is speech. You say something rather than do something. Speech is not deed. You didn't do anything. You only spoke. It's a very serious violation. You spoke words of blasphemy. You
Speaking Lashon Hara is speaking Lashon Hara. That's a deed.
Speaking Lashon Hara is speaking. It's not. It's a sin, and blasphemy is a very terrible sin. It's a very severe transgression, but it is not a transgression that involves an action. So only a sin which involves an action and speech is not considered action, it's not considered a deed, therefore he does not bring a sin offering. Because the Torah says one who acts inadvertently, ba'asosa, when he does, and speaking is not doing, right? People say they're going to do a lot of things, right? And they don't do it. If every time a guy said he's going to do something, he did it, we'd have a different world. So there's a big journey from, what is it called? Talk the talk or walk the talk. Accordingly, one who accepts a false deity as a god, now that's a serious sin, it's idolatry. and you're liable for chorus if you do it knowingly and willfully, and execution by stoning. But if you do it inadvertently, you are exempt from the sacrifice. Why? Because also it is done verbally. You accept it upon yourself, this deity, verbally, orally. If you would actually bow down to the idol or something, that is definitely an action. But if you just say, oh, I pledge my soul to JC or Buddha or whoever, that's speech, not action. 3, with regard to all the transgressions punishable by Korah and Torah, except for the 3 which were mentioned, sacrilege, blasphemy, bris, and korban pesach, if a private individual violated one of these prohibitions inadvertently, he must bring a fixed sin offering, with the exception of an impure person who partook of sacrificial meat, and an impure person who was tomei, who entered a temple, neither of which you're allowed to do in a state of tumah. These 2 do not bring a fixed sin offering, but rather an adjustable guilt offering, as will be explained. Not in this chapter, but in one of the coming chapters. 4, only an animal is brought as a fixed sin offering. You don't have the option of bringing a bird or a meal offering, a flower, when it comes to a fixed sin offering. It has to be an animal. What if a guy is poor and he says he can't afford it? He comes to the rabbi, Rabbi, what do? I sinned, but I can't afford an animal. What do you think the rabbi's going to tell him? He say, listen, if you can't afford it, you better not sin. Okay, that was a joke, but there's some truth in it. So only an animal brought in contrast to an adjustable guilt offering, where it's not fixed. If one is rich, he can bring an animal. If he's poor, he brings a fowl. If he's still poorer, a tenth of an ephah is a meal offering, as will be explained. Thus, all the sins for which a private person brings a fixed sin offering, total 43 in all. And now, the bulk of them have to do with forbidden relationships, incestuous relationships, etc. And then there's a few others, but I think 26 out of the 43, if I'm not mistaken, are all to do with forbidden relationships that we read about on Yom Kippur. And they are. I know many of these will sound weird to you, but when it comes to this department, anything happens. And you see it today empirically in the world. Incest was previously unthinkable. Today, it's not so unthinkable. We read about it in the newspapers all too often. And it would not surprise me if our morally lax generation will soon agitate that incest should become legal, as many other things which have been illegal for generations have in our own time become legal. Right? I don't have to spell them out. In the area of intimate relationships. So let's list the 43 inadvertent sins which require a sin offering. Now you may ask, how could you commit an incestuous relationship inadvertently? It's a good question, huh? What do you think?
Yeah, it doesn't sound logical.
Any takers, any offers, any ideas? How can you commit a forbidden relationship? How can you be intimate with someone and it was inadvertent, but you didn't know what you were doing? Okay, so maybe you were drunk. That's possible. That happens all the time, right? People have too much to drink. They lose their inhibitions and they get up to all kinds of stuff they would never do. That's one example. But he'll give some other examples. He gives another example later. There were two women in the house. It was dark. And he was intimate with one of them, and he's not sure which one. And one was forbidden and one was not forbidden. That's one example. Okay. So I'm going to go through this quickly. When he was intimate with his mother, his wife's mother. Anybody tempted by their mothers-in-law? I don't know. One who was intimate with his maternal grandmother. One who was intimate with his paternal grandmother. His daughter, his daughter's daughter, his son's daughter, his wife's daughter. One who was intimate with the daughter of his wife's daughter. One who was intimate with the daughter of his wife's son. One who was intimate with his sister. So these are all incestuous relationships. Or his sister who was the daughter of his father's wife. What would you call her? Not a full sister.
An aunt.
No.
Oh, his sister who's...
Sister who was the daughter of his father's wife. So it sounds like it's his father's stepdaughter.
Yeah.
But I don't think, if I remember correctly, there's no relationship between him and his father's stepdaughter. Why is it forbidden? I'm not sure it's forbidden to, I think you could even marry your father's stepdaughter. It might mean it's his father's daughter, but not by his mother. So which means it's his half sister, rather than a stepsister. M, intimate with his father's sister and aunt, mother's sister, aunt, wife's sister, sister-in-law. Can you marry your sister-in-law?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Explain. According to this, you can't. So the answer is, when you're still married to her sister, you may not marry two sisters.
Yeah.
In the age 1,000+ years ago, polygamy was permissible in Jewish law.
Yeah.
But you could not marry two sisters, because you would make them hate each other, because they would be competing for your love and attention all the time. So, but let's say your wife dies, you're then allowed to marry her sister, because you're not married to two sisters. You're married to one sister at a time.
Yeah.
We have in our own congregation, I did the wedding some years ago of a man who married his late wife's sister. In fact, I was just asked to do his unveiling. So it's permissible to marry your wife's sister after her death, but not while she's alive.
Yibum.
No, that's not Yibum.
Not Yibum.
Late brother's wife.
Yibum is if the man dies,
Late
she marries his
brother's
brother.
wife.
Yes.
That's Yibum.
Yeah.
Okay. P, his father's wife, meaning his stepmother, the wife of his father's brother, an aunt, his son's wife, his daughter-in-law, his brother's wife, a sister-in-law, another man's wife, that's adultery. A woman who is in a niddah state, who has not gone to the mikveh, one who is intimate with a male, a homosexual act, one who is intimate with his father or his father's brother, or bestiality, God forbid, whether a man or a woman. Thus, all the prohibitions involving forbidden relations, punishable akoros, total 26. Then we said there's 43, right? So 43 minus 26, we're left with another 17, right? So what are the other 17? The others are 17. They are one who serves a false deity by performing a deed. He bows down to an idol, for example. He doesn't just speak about it, he does something, an action. One who gives his descendants to Molech. Molech was a form of idolatry in biblical times. He used to pass the child through fire. One who divines through Ov or Yidoni. Those are two different forms of spiritualism, of dabbling in the occult, which is forbidden. One who desecrates the Shabbos. One who performs forbidden labor on Yom Kippur, or who eats and drinks on Yom Kippur, or who eats chometz on Pesach, or who partakes of fat. What does fat mean? It doesn't just mean if your steak has some fat on it, that you didn't cut off the fat on your steak. It means, a kosher butchery, one of the main things a kosher butchery has to do that the customer never sees, because it's always in the back, in the workshop. What did the kosher butcher do, or the mashgiach? In Yiddish, it's called trebering. You know what trebering means? Trebering is the removal of the forbidden fats from the forequarter of the animal. So even though we're allowed to eat the forequarter, there are certain fatty parts which are treif, and they have to be removed before you can sell them as kosher meat. And that happens behind the scenes in kosher butcheries. Usually the mashgiach is trained to do this. It's called nikur, or in Hebrew, or trebering in Yiddish. If you partake of those forbidden fat, one who partakes of blood, on more than one occasion, the Torah forbids us to consume blood, even though we're called bloody Jews. One who partakes of sacrificial meat after the time for eating it passes, it's called noisor. Like the Korban Pesach had to be eaten by midnight, right? Every sacrifice, every offering had a certain time limit. Some was for a day, some were for 2 days. If you eat it after that time, you're in violation. One who partakes of sacrificial meat that was disqualified because of an undesirable intent concerning time, meaning that, like the Kohen who was performing the offering, had in mind that the donor that is going to eat it in 3 days' time after the allotted allowable time, then that ruins the whole offering. You got to do it again, and you're not allowed to eat that sacrificial meat. One who slaughters a sacrificial animal outside the temple courtyard, could only be done in the temple courtyard for offerings on the altar, or one who offers a sacrifice outside the temple. Once the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple, was built in Jerusalem, it was forbidden to bring any sacrifices anywhere else. In the Bible, we read how Noah and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob all brought offerings to thank God for different occasions and milestones in their life. Wherever it happened, they built a little altar and brought an offering. But once the temple was built in Jerusalem, you're not allowed to bring anything anywhere else. One who prepares anointing oil like that oil that was used in the temple, You're not allowed to replicate it for personal use. Or one who prepares the incense in the same formula as it was used in the temple. Q, one who anoints himself with the anointing oil of the temple, use it for personal use. So that is another 17 plus the 26 forbidden relationships, gives us 43 transgressions for which one brings a fixed sin offering for their inadvertent violation. What is the sacrifice that a person who inadvertently violated should bring? What does it bring? What kind of animal? So if he inadvertently violated against words, bring a false deity, he must bring a female goat in the 1 year old, less than 1 year old. This applies whether it's an ordinary person, the king, the high priest, or the priest who takes the people to war. Everyone is equal when it comes to the worship of false divinities. They have to bring a female goat. If, however, one inadvertently violated one of the other 42 transgressions we just mentioned, different rules apply. If the transgression was an ordinary oak, he brings a she-goat or a ewe. A ewe is a she-lamb. This is the sin offering of one of the common people mentioned. If the king violated, nobody's above the law in Judaism. Not the king, not the high priest, not the head of the Sanhedrin. If the king made a mistake, he has to bring a male goat. If a Kohen did it, he has to bring a bull. And finally, number 5, the same laws apply whether one person inadvertently violates or many do, a group of people. As the verse in Numbers, there will be one law for those who transgress inadvertently in the plural. Meaning, if the people of a city inadvertently transgress, the whole town made a mistake. For example, the whole town got the calendar date wrong. So before we started, Dave Seif asked me today, Rabbi, is today Tu B'Shvat or was it yesterday? The answer is today is Tu B'Shvat, the new year for trees. If you haven't done so yet, please enjoy some fruit today, especially the fruit for which Israel is praised, namely grapes, figs, dates, pomegranates, and olives. And so we didn't know if it was yesterday or today. What if a whole town didn't know if Yom Kippur was today or yesterday? And they fasted yesterday, and they got the date wrong. It's actually today. Which means they ate on Yom Kippur. And they worked on Yom Kippur. Ay, ay, ay. Each one of the transgressors in the town, if there's 1,000 people, then all 1,000 people have to bring 2 sin offerings, ewes or she-goats, female sheep or goats. Can't just bring one for the whole city. Even though it was one common mistake of the whole town, every inhabitant, every citizen has to bring his own. Similarly, if they all inadvertently transgressed and offered incense to a false deity, each one of the transgressors must bring a goat in its first year of life as a sin offering. Okay, you ready for the quiz? Put on your thinking yarmulkes. Why does one not bring a sin offering for inadvertent blasphemy? We discussed this.
Number 2.
Thank you very much, because we said he's only blasphemy is speech, not action. There has to be a deed. For which of the following transgressions one not obligated to bring a fixed sin offering?
Hmm.
3.
3 is correct.
Number 3.
3.
Yeah.
We discussed the other 2.
Hmm.
Which animal should an ordinary person, not a king or a Kohen, bring as a fixed offering for inadvertently eating chametz on Pesach?
2.
Correct.
Number 2.
Well done.
Yep.
Well done. And finally, if many citizens of a city, do they each bring a fixed sin offering?
Yes.
We just had that a minute ago. Yes,
Yeah.
each one has to bring, you can't just bring one for the whole town. Thank you, guys. Any questions?
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thanks,
you, Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Any
Thank
questions?
you.
Uh,
Okay, have a great week. Happy
Thank you,
New Year.
Rabbi. You too.
Thank you.
Happy New Year for the trees.
And to you.
Oh,
And to
yeah.
you.
Somebody wished me Shana Tova today.
Shut-
I wasn't sure. I wasn't.
You're a treat.
I thought it's because I hadn't seen him since the 1st of January. But now I realize he probably meant for the trees.
Yes.
The Goldman tree.
You know what I told the guy whose birthday was on Tu B'Shvat? I said, do me a favor, make like a tree and grow up. Thank you. I was just joking. He still talks to me. Okay. Cheers, guys. Sei gesund.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Rabbi.